In this video guide, we're going to take a look at how we create a new folder definition and then assign that folder type to a workflow. So we're going to look at how we create this new folder definition called Special Projects. So if we create one of these folders, then it has a number. We'll give it a description. It has a client attribute that we've added. And if we create this, we will also look at how we create a simple three-step workflow associated with this new folder definition. So in this case, we're going to send it to the first step in the workflow. To create our new folder type, we need to log into DDM Administration. From here we can go to folder types, and we're going to right click and add a new folder, and this is going to be called Special Projects. We can add a description, and we need to give a table name. Now the table name gets created in SQL and there are no spaces allowed, so in this case I'm just going to call it SP Projects, so Special Projects. We need to say that this folder is active, which means that it can be seen in the DDM Office client, and team viewers we're going to set to no. The default owner group, for now I'm just going to select project members, and we're going to come back and change this later. And our default owner is going to be the creator. So if we create this, then we'll have our new folder type created, and if we have a look at the preview, this is what our folder will look like. So we're just going to make a few changes to this before we carry on. So if we close this window, we want to edit our folder definition, and I want to change the folder name is going to be project number, and we're going to add one additional attribute that is going to be client. So if we're doing this project for a specific client, then we might want to include that on the folder form itself. So we'll make it voluntary. The type is going to be text, so we have some other options here that we can choose from, and this is going to be a free text lookup. So the user can either select from a list or add new clients, and the size is the number of characters in the client name, so we'll go for 80, and we're going to add one client just so that we can see how this works. So we've got one lookup value in our list. We now decide which page this attribute is going to appear on, and so if we show the preview, then we have two pages we can select from, the properties or the custom page. We're going to go with properties page, and our new label appears on our form. So let's first of all correct the label. And typically in positioning these, if we consider rows of 25 pixels, then I can say that this is going to be 150, and it now sits nicely under the comments field. This is 120. If we hover over any of the fields in the preview, then we can see where this field is positioned, and this is 120 from the left. So we've now got this in the right place. At the minute, the right hand edge of this attribute field is connected to the window. Because of this anchor right, I'm going to remove that, and I'm going to make this field the same width as this one above, which if we hover over this we can see is 450. So if we say 450, and finally we just need to position this client label. So we could say 150, but if we add 2 to that, then it sits nicely in the middle of the attribute field. Okay, so that's completed. We're going to store that, and if I log into DDM Office. Then we can now see that we've got our Special Projects folder. Let's just get rid of this prompt. And if I go to create a new one, at the minute I'm not able to create it. There are no access controls defined for this folder. Okay, it's asking for a project number, but even if I go beyond that, it requires a state, and we can't actually currently select a state. So we need to go back into admin and resolve that. So just before we resolve it, we need to look at setting up some groups that have permission to work on this folder type that we're creating. And for folders, these are called roles. So if we go to our folder roles, what I'm going to do is to create a new role called our special project team. Members of this team can work on special projects. So just as an example, now in building this and testing it, what I'm going to do is put my own account into this role so that as I test it, I'm not sending emails around the organization. And now we can see where we can set up the access controls for this new role. And what we're looking at here is special projects. So if I right click on special projects that are active, then for team members it's visible and modify. I'm not going to worry about the changing of the state because we'll do that through the workflow. And then for a closed project, then it's just visible to our members. One other thing that I typically do here is just change this label from Project Archive to Folder Archive, as this can be for any folder type. It's not just for project folders, so we can save that away as well. The other thing that I'm going to do in preparation is that I want to use auto numbering for my folders. So I'm going to go to Auto Number Administration, and I'm going to add a new numbering rule for special projects, and this is available to folders, and we're going to give it a prefix of SP and 5 digits, so it's going to be an SP 1, 2, 3, etc. So that numbering rule is created. If we once more go back to our folder definition for special projects, then on the folder name we're now going to change this from free text to auto number, and in this case we're going to select the special projects numbering type. What we can also do here is say that this is the default numbering type, so this is always used when we create a new folder of this type. And finally, if we look at the folder state, so by default we have active and closed, and we can add to that list if we want. So we might have proposed, on hold, some other states for the project, but we'll stay with the default ones, and we're going to make the active as the default state. And if we save that, we've now completed our folder definition. If we come back into DDM and create a new special projects folder, our number is assigned for us. This is test number 1, and we could select our client, and if we add a new client, for example, then our project folder is now created. So we're just going to say no to this, and here's our project folder with the information filled in. So the next thing we need to look at is how we can assign this to a workflow. Currently this workflow is just sending this folder to another user in the system or to another role. So we're going to cancel this. So that's informal workflow. We now need to look at setting up a formal workflow. So we go back into admin and we go to the workflows area, and we're going to add a new workflow called special projects. So this is our project workflow. This is the first version of this workflow, so we add a 1, and what we now need to do is start to add our steps. So this is project approval, so we need to get the project approved. So we're just going to fill in the basic information and then you can start to build and extend on that. So we'll copy this. You can give a more informative description that extends what the step name is. For now this is just going to be project approval, and we have a choice of either an ordinary step or a decision step. So I'm going to select an ordinary step. Now the three key pieces of information that we need to fill in are: on arriving at this step, set status to active, and on arriving at this step, set the folder owner to special project team. So we could have other roles here that we select from, and notify via email these members, entire role. We have an option to set up additional email notifications, which I'm not going to use, but we also have the option here to allow a user sending the folder to this step to select who should own it. So I will select that option as well. So we click on OK, and we've created our first step. Our next step is project in work, so it's now active and it's being worked on. Again, just to keep this quick, we'll just copy this down here. It's still going to be active, and it's still going to be the special project team, and this is going to be the entire role, and again we may select someone to work on the project for us. Our final step is going to be project close, so once we've completed the project or we've rejected the project, and we'll see that as we move forward. So we've got project closed, and at this point it will go to closed. This is going to go to folder archive, where we park closed folders, and we can say entire role. We don't need to select to send to an individual. This is typically owned by the administrator, but what we are going to do is say we want to notify the folder's originator that this has been closed. It's also convenient at the end of a workflow to convert any locked items to references. So we'll click on OK. That prevents items getting locked in a closed folder. Now we've completed our steps. We just need to save that back to the database before we either double click or right click and edit to continue working with the workflow. The next thing we're going to do is say what is the first step, and we're going to say that this is project approval. So let's save that back, come in again. If we now have a look at the preview, what we have is 3 steps that are not connected, and to start to build and connect these steps we have to again look at the step definitions. So from project approval, where a new project proposal has been sent for approval, the approvers can either say the action is approved, or if we send it to closed, it could be rejected. Okay, so we've made our first routes forward from the proposed step. From work, we might need to send it back to the approvers, so this could be clarification required. So there may be a query on the specification. Alternatively, if the project has been completed, then we could just say closed. And if we again save this away, come back in, have a look at our preview, we should now have some connections between the steps. So let's just take a look at this. So we'll start to lay this out. And what you can do is, if you line up the steps and you use the Alt and cursor keys, you can move these boxes a pixel at a time, which helps you get all of the boxes lined up correctly. So we'll just do the same with this one. Let's go up a step and then just move it across. And then to select and highlight the lines, if you click on a line, then you'll see that the end gets a node on it, and if you hover the mouse over it, you get a crosshair. What we need to do is drop this inside the box. Don't drop it outside, or so it won't snap to the box. If you drop it just inside the box, it will snap to the edge of the box. So let's take the other end of this and put this in place as well. So we also have a line going right across this that is effectively our rejection. So we're going to drag this to the bottom, and then if you click and hold, then you can drag a new line or a new node in the line to set this up. Just try and get this lined up, which is a little bit fiddly. There we go. And I'm just going to balance this out, just going to move this up here. Oops. If you get an extra node, just click on it and it will remove it. So that's snapped into position. So there are other things you can do here to color the steps, to change the font or the color of the font, go for round corners, etc. In this case, we're just going to save this away. This is fine for the exercise we're doing right now, and we will save this as well. So we've now created our very simple 3-step workflow that is currently not active. So we're just going to activate this, so we can right click activate, and now our workflow is active. We can see here a summary of who is involved in the workflow, so the owning group or role. And now if we go back to the folder, we can say for our special projects, we want to connect our special projects folder to the special projects workflow. Now when I click on this, I'm going to get an error, because what's happening here is I'm trying to send the folder to an owning group or role who doesn't have permission to view the folder, and so we just need to resolve this before we can complete this step. If we have a look at our workflow for special projects, this is being sent to folder archive, and if we look at the permissions for folder archive, they don't have any access controls against our new special projects folder. So if I just multi-select those two items, say edit, and what we're going to say is that these should be visible, save this, and now if we go back to the folder definition, go to special projects, and I should be able to tick this box. So the effect of this, if we go back to DDM, and if we just do a search for our special projects, here's the test folder that we created, and if we now select workflow, you'll see that we're going straight into the new workflow that we've created, and I'm going to send it at the first step to myself, and so I can now start to test my workflow. So if I accept the project and send it forward, I can reject it, send it back, etc. So we can now start putting documents in and testing the workflow and making sure that it's working correctly. Once we've established all of that, we can go back into DDM and start to refine it, and by that I mean we may add new roles so that different people or different groups of people have responsibility at various steps through the workflow, and then against the workflow definition we can select which roles the folder is being sent to. The other thing in the roles is if we have a look at our special project team members, at the minute I've only got myself in this, we will now need to start selecting other users who are part of the project team. So just a quick overview covering the basics of creating new folder definitions and then creating a workflow that we're going to then relate to that new folder type.